Yeah, Stefan, what the others know is to go quickly. Quickly is not my thing, but I will try to go quickly in a sketch of what we are doing in order to have some background on our conversation of possibilities of collaboration. Okay, so I am Pippi. I am affiliated. I'm a professor. My professor sits between the Athens University of Economics and Business, and that's a different university from the University of Athens. This is the Athens University of Economics and Business. It's like the LSE, you know, we don't have a medicine school, and we are very proud of our achievements in economics. And then also at the University of Cambridge. So here, I'm a professor at the School of Economics. At the University of Cambridge, I am at the Earth Sciences Department, which shows my interdisciplinarity by default. And our team is a team called IFORIA, Alliance of Excellence for Research and Innovation on IFORIA. IFORIA means sustainability in Greece. And it's a very interdisciplinary team. Here you see a part of the Greek-based researchers of that team. And what we are mainly doing is working on innovative systems transformation for the sustainable interaction between the nature, natural systems, economic systems, and socioeconomic systems. And I am also leading this Global Scientific Association, Environmental Resource Economies, including the European Association with more than 1,070 and 700 members, the US Association, who has about the same members, Latin American Association, Africa, and the Asian Association, Asia Pacific. And this is an association of environmental economists, and these are the sub-discipline, I would say, of economics that are more inclined to work in interdisciplinary structures because their mission is to get into the economic models and systems, natural resources, and the environment. So the story, you know the story, multi-crisis, not just economic crisis, low economic growth, inflationary pressures, shrinking fiscal spaces, but also environmental crises like the climate, like biodiversity collapse and pollution, and a big crisis with regards to increasing inequality between the global south, the global north, between income groups within countries, even what we call developed countries. So all this leading to geopolitical pressures, and as we would say in SDSN, we have our blueprint 2015, we agreed on the 17 goals. These are goals exactly on this interaction between nature, economy, and society. And it is important to understand that this is not an environmental agenda, it's a global agenda for getting the whole of the world on a pathway that can support in a sustainable fashion the welfare of people. So this is IFORIA. IFORIA brings together, and somewhere here I should have Cambridge, but I need to revise my slide, brings together the research centers and innovation acceleration hubs and science policy networks and scientific associations and academies that I lead or chair or co-lead or have some explicit involvement in that on founding them and so on. So there is a lot of work on research and innovation, and this is mostly funded by Horizon money, ERC money, Prima money, Erasmus money, but also from international organizations, not just European. And then we have the innovation acceleration. Innovation acceleration, it's the work we do on accelerating spin-offs and startups. The last 5 years, we have accelerated 250 startups and spin-offs. We also not just incubate them, but we also get them to meet funds. We work with many funds, inland and abroad, and we also work with many potential clients. So we bring to them clients and seed money in order to be accelerated. And they are mostly focused on climate adaptation, shipping and ports, and general sustainability, marine transition in the Black Sea. We work very closely with EIT. EIT is the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, which is the other leg of DG research and innovation. We lead the climate kick of the country. The climate kick is the knowledge and information community that focuses on climate transition of the economies. And we have a lot of involvement in other kicks as well, also in the water kick that is being formulated now. And we have an explicit partnership with UNFCCC, and this partnership comes to support the Global Climate Hub of SDSN. So with Jeff, we traveled in more than 120 countries, and we discussed with governments and other stakeholders what really they need in order to be able to transpose all the technological effort, but also the policy effort and transformation effort into implementable climate neutrality and climate resilience pathways. And what they needed is details. Detailing the technological change, in the policy change, in the pricing instruments change, in the fiscal change, and also some further tool that will give all our stakeholders into and transformative discussion. So we have living labs in order to accelerate that in all countries that SDSN has hubs. In terms of science policy network, we work a lot with SDSN. We lead Global Climate Hub. I will give you some detail on that, but also SDSN Europe. SDSN Europe now has 900 universities. Together with Angelo Ricaponi, I'm chairing that hub, and we are doing a lot, not just on climate neutrality and climate resilience for European countries, but for all these elements that IFORIA is treating as thematic priorities. So our thematic priorities are climate neutrality, climate resilience, water, food, energy, and biodiversity nexus, and land use change, sustainable oceans and seas, sustainable socioeconomic, financial, and behavioral economics, innovation acceleration, and upskilling, reskilling, and education that is crucial for creating the capacity for the transformation. And of course, I'm also involved in many academies and scientific associations, leading the sustainability teams of the academies, and also leading the World and European Association of Environmental Resource Economists. These are very, very powerful associations across the literature and in the discipline. So we try to bring all this power in terms of intellectual capacity and solutions to serve for the people. Over the years, we've achieved attracting more than $500 million. Funding is more than that. There are at the moment 200 contracted researchers in Greece, in Europe, and some beyond Europe, and we are working in more than 120 countries. So this is who we are. These are some of our funders. I will share the presentation because it's too much to see now. And as I said, our priorities are climate neutrality and resilience. Only the gray areas, we don't have projects. And now we are working on some projects that are in the gray areas, working on launching those projects. And you can, and these are the partners within the projects that we work. So it's an extensive network of research and innovation centers and acceleration centers and science policy centers, but also companies in the private sector and public companies and governments. And each and every project has its own budget, its own team, and so on. I won't go through that. I will share the presentation. And as I said before, the second thematic priority is water, food, energy, biodiversity, land use, and land use change. Gray areas, we don't have an explicit project on that particular element, but of course within climate and climate resilience, climate neutrality and climate resilience projects, we have some element of the WEF and biodiversity nexus. And then the partners and the projects which won't go. We are very proud of our ERC project. This is a synergy grant. It's the most prestigious grant you can get within the ERC. And the ERC is the most prestigious awarding body in Europe. And this is about designing the next generation of urban drinking water systems. And it brings together not just an economist, but an electrical engineer, a mathematician working on AI and machine learning, and an informatics, water informatics expert. Then oceans and seas, we work on all the seas that are within the boundaries of the Americans and the Asian seas, I would say, but now we have started working with the seas as well, the small island developing states. So there is a lot of work going there as well, partners and projects. And then economics is one main thrust in what we do. A lot of work in Europe, Asia, and the US. We also have some work in Australia, it's not colored yet. The team is made up of, obviously, economists, statisticians, econometricians, mathematicians, but also a lot of engineers and natural scientists, and also a lot of people working on policy analysis, law, stakeholder participatory approaches, systems thinking, and of course, a lot of people, all of them working on AI and machine learning, and the new, they're not so new, they are renamed, is what I can tell you for sure, but machine learning and AI is one big part of what we do. And these are partners and projects. And let me also say that within the economics work that we do, we work both on the supply and the demand side. So also with regards to costing, but also with regards to behavioral economics in how you change demand, experimental behavior economics, and at the same time valuation. So we do a lot on environmental, natural resource, cultural valuation, monetizing these resources in order to be incorporated into decision-making, cost-benefit analysis, national accounts, beyond GDP frameworks, and so on. This is our innovation acceleration ecosystem. Like I said, the last 5 years, we have accelerated 250 startups, 4 accelerators, a lot of work here, and this is our partners, the different accelerators and the accelerated startups and the underlying projects. And then why is it important for us? And we work very closely not just with the project that finance our work, but we bring some of the work that we do here into SDG Academy that Jeff is leading, that the Columbia Sustainable Development Institute is leading. Well, this is crucial for us, and it became very obvious in 2023 at the COP in Dubai. We've launched a report, and since then we've been working on very relevant matters, identifying what skills and occupations are needed in order to actually implement the 150 laws of the European Green Deal. So the European Green Deal is something that was launched in 2019, late December. And since then, the last 5 years, we have 150 laws and regulations. And we transpose using AI one part of those skills and regulations, skills and occupations that are needed to implement those regulations are actually in the labor market of Europe, not going beyond Europe. And 85% of those are missing. So even if you have the technology, the policies, the transformational requirements and advice, you cannot implement anything if you don't have the labor force. What are you going to implement? How? You don't have it. So we created AI tools that allow you to identify exactly what skills and occupations you need in order to transpose your law into actual implementation. And that is a good guiding, let's say, manual for identifying where you need to invest in upskilling and reskilling. So these tools that we created then also try to go into the existing upskilling and reskilling programs and also university and other educational programs in order to navigate you through these available courses that can allow you to be part of the transformational labor force, to get the skills as soon as possible from sources that exist in order to transform. And these are our partners in creating programs for upskilling and reskilling and educational courses across Europe and beyond. And we consider this very skilling, especially as an education, a higher education institution. And these are the different projects that we work on upskilling and reskilling with their budgets and their partnerships. So very quickly, our general approach is starting from where we are. This is the 2025 SDSN report that we launched 2 weeks ago. I was part of the launching, very honored to be part of the launching. And this is a framework where it allows you to identify and quantify and continuously monitor, at least at annual intervals, your progress with regards to sustainability. And this is where we are, right? Then, this is where we are. I speak to the converted, but let me articulate this. This where we are is quite detailed because we know which, how each of the environmental systems is performing. This is the food system, the climate system, the land use system, the ocean system, oceans and seas, and the water systems. And you know the coloring, so I don't need to explain that coloring. And not only we have detail at global scale at each and every country, but it gets even more detailed when you focus on particular regions of the world. Given my leadership in the European hub of SDSN, we have a very big role in working with Pion, on the environmental, on the SDR report, Sustainable Development Report of Europe. which downscales from global to European and from European to national. And then it can get even more detailed because we also downscale within countries. This is Greece and the peripheries of Greece, and we can even downscale further within cities and villages. And we can even downscale further within companies. So we develop a tool that allows you to identify SDG current level of performance in each and every segment of the value chain of each and every company you are interested in, measure in terms of ESGs and SDGs, the current level of performance, and then restructure the business plan of a company, the investment business plan of a company in order to accelerate the process of full implementation of SDGs and ESGs as they appear in the European Green Deal, in the Sustainability Framework Directive for each and every company. So it can happen, it can be transposed for companies as well. It's a different wording and structure, but the ideas and the principles are there. And we even do it for the stock exchange. So we create portfolios of stocks that allow hedging against the risk of each and every SDGs. And you can showcase that using global market capitalization of up to 97%. So it's global, this study. You can actually showcase that the ESG, SDG compatible portfolios are the ones that win the market. They outperform non-ESG, non-SDG based portfolio structures. And of course, if you work at the regional level, your basic aim is to move from where you are, like we measure it with the SDGs, to where you want to go. And where you want to go, it is more or less agreed. Globally is the SDGs and the Paris Agreement, and then you go regionally. For example, in Europe is the European Green Deal. This is a bird's eye view of the main regulations and laws of the European Green Deal, the climate law, the EU taxonomy, the Fit for 55, the common agricultural policy that got connected to the goals of the European Green Deal, industrial policies, digital policies, nature restoration law, the Sustainability Directive law, and the Omnibus now relaxing some of the requirements. So this is where we want to go. These are our targets. We know where we are with the SDG framework. And let me say that at the SDG framework, we also work on detailing further the information that we use for SDG performance. For example, we work with Guion in order to include satellite data for SDG 2, mostly with regards to land use and crop requirements, but also nature used land area and the ecosystem services that this area provides. So the more detailed, the better it gets. This is a deep neural network analysis of the connection between the European Green Deal and the SDGs, where we find a very strong connection. I'm not going to go through that. I will finish with the Global Climate Hub, because this is something that we are interested to work with, and maybe show a few AI tools. So the Global Climate Hub, this is our bigger, I would say, project with SDSN, and basically works in 3 layers and brings together this unique, currently unique and very original methodology for dealing with this development of the transition pathways. So we said that we know where we are, We know where we want to go. We need to figure out the way to go there. And this way we call pathways. And this way is the optimal mixture of technologies, policies, fiscal and financial instruments, and other socioeconomic transformations that need to happen in order to get from where you are to full climate neutrality, climate resilience. Let me also say that the Global Climate Hub is an understatement of what we do, because here we take into account all the systems that are important, the big systems that are crucial in sustaining the resilience of an economy and a society. So our transition pathways include not just the climate system, but all other systems. So how does it work? It has 3 layers. The first layer is an interdisciplinary mathematical modeling, where we have downscaling of climate scenario, we have detailed energy mathematical modeling, transport modeling, land use modeling, including crop and livestock and nature-based uses, marine use modeling, including shipping and energy production from the sea, and ecosystem services, and so on, health systems, innovation systems. And then when we have an integrated solution of this over time and sometimes over space within each and every country and across a region of the world, we embed it in general equilibrium analysis in order to identify the effects on the different sectors of each transition pathway in each country and between countries through trade. This is the first layer that works simultaneously with the transdisciplinary co-design. EPUN is leading the transdisciplinary co-design towards using systems innovation approaches and living labs, where we capitalize on the structure of SDSN, and in each and every country we have a living lab where we work with the national stakeholders in order to approve, to validate, to integrate their preferences, visions, fears, reservations, and so on into these pathways that we mathematically model and analytically or solve analytically or solve through simulation. And the final bit of the whole exercise is that we keep, and you can read about the methodology of the hub in Nature and many other prestigious journals. The final step is that we document all of this in a digital platform that collects all the data, spatial, real-time, socioeconomic, Internet of Things data that we need for our analysis, including the data in the stakeholders living lab. Then we have all the models, either ours or existing, available for simulation, integrated simulation, and integrated solutions. And then we develop tools, digital twins, visualization platforms, decision support tools, VR experiences that allow the stakeholders to actually get a feel of the recommendations for the transition pathways to climate neutrality and climate resilience. The aim is for this platform to become a tool. It will be made available during the Climate Week in New York. Evita and Yota and Eleni are working on it, and the leadership of the platform is under Professor Ioannidis, who is the president of ACM. ACM is the Association of Computing Machinery, is the biggest association, scientific association in the world of all the people that use digital tools. It has hundreds of thousands of members. And we hope that this platform will become a tool for all relevant stakeholders, the scientists, the data people, the modelers, the socioeconomists, the governments that want to implement the companies that want to implement. And we have launched 2 reports from the Global Climate Pact, the European Integrated Assessment Tool, and also a report on Greece. There will be a report for each and every country in the world. And we hope that we will be able to cover this in the next 2 years. We already started working beyond Europe, the Balkans, and the UK that this report includes, with China, with countries in Africa, and with Southeast Asia. So the idea is to provide an explicitly detailed transition pathway at national, subnational level that can then be upscaled to regional level. And it integrates low emissions analysis for the energy and transport system and agriculture system using results from a simulator called FABLE that SDSN and EASA is leading, and we are part of the development of this calculator. Water requirements, land use requirements, maritime modeling. And to cut a long story short, we have the basic national commitments of each country. In Europe, they mainly transpose to the national energy and climate plans, the Common Agricultural Policy, and the Water Framework Directive. And we simulate the implementation of those in the most cost-effective, time-effective way possible, taking into account trade-offs and synergies between the sectors and between technologies and between transformations. So we simulate the business as usual and the national commitments. What it would take to meet the national commitments by the date of the commitment. The results showcase what will happen to energy consumption per country. It is interesting to see that if we meet energy commitments by 2050, we would need to have a drop in consumption by 25% and in supply by 30%. And have a very different energy mix, which is, of course, away from fossil fuel. And you can see for every country, you can also see between countries what it would take in terms of the grid corridors, what you import, what you import, what you export in terms of energy, what is the optimal energy mix in each country, and even identify energy corridors for each of the energy sources. This is hydrogen. So all this is very informative. This is the energy consumption and greenhouse gas emissions of energy consumption per country. This is energy supply and greenhouse gas emissions for energy supply. This is how land allocation should change in order to meet requirements of climate neutrality and climate resilience, and also use of land space for nature-based solutions. These are water requirements. These are adaptation requirements, examples, downscaling in specific areas where you have extreme weather events. And of course, we end with the impact assessment models that introduce the economics of the whole thing, articulating, quantifying and monetizing not just produced capital, not just human capital, but also natural capital in terms of ecosystem services and the monetary valuation of those ecosystem services, and integrating them into impact assessment models in order to see what is the effect in economic terms and in social welfare terms and in terms of impact of different income groups of the suggested changes in each sector of the economy. So it's a very detailed work for countries with fiscal space, the most developed countries. You can articulate fiscal policies that support the vulnerable. So this is what we do in a general equilibrium analysis here, saying how you use the income from climate and other sustainability policies in order to support the vulnerable. And you can show that you can actually increase GDP, increase employment, and increase equality in all regions of Europe if you have a sensible fiscal policy. If you don't have fiscal space, that is the global south, then we are discussing, again with Jeff, the restructure of global financial architecture into different kinds of multilateral provision for loans that are long-term, SDG-driven, and low interest rate or zero interest rate for the developing world, because it pays, because you can really achieve higher development growth rates in the global south than anywhere in the north. And I will stop here just saying that there are many AI tools. Yanni, this is the skills AI tool. There are others that figure out what occupations, like I said before, you need in order to make the implementation of the policies. Where are the courses to upskill and reskill? And also another tool that is interesting is a combination of AI and existing recommendation results from the Global Climate Hub, is using fuzzy logic. How do you implement in terms of timing your national commitments in order to achieve lower emissions, faster achievement, lower cost, and lower dependency on inputs? And this we calculate and recommend for each and every country. And finally, we are involved in a big 30 million project working on 150 regions in Europe that produce this very interesting, easy to navigate tool that identifies 57 financing sources for climate resilience projects, 78 instruments, and 169 best practices, just in case you are searching for instruments and tools that can enable the financing of well-articulated projects. What I said in Seville is that you can have all the financing you need. And actually, we have all the financing we need, because there is financing in the public sector, but we all know that the fiscal space, if you add all the fiscal space in the world, you don't have enough money for the SDG transition. You definitely need private money. And the private money are going to come in if you come with the investors. So you have to de-risk your projects in order to get the investors in the loop of a blended finance, structural financing brain. And to de-risk the projects and the investments, you need to have the details of the projects. They have to be detailed enough in order to measure the risks, identify, hedge against them as much as possible, and then present to the private sector something that is very clear, very articulated, very mature, and then they are convinced. Because at the moment, 30 trillion every year are sitting in savings, waiting for interesting investments, and these interesting investments cannot be found. So you need to detail the projects. And the approach we have in SDSN Global Climate Hub is the one that details those projects. This is what actually got UNFCCC interested in our work, because they have many deep dives in different countries of the world, and they want to articulate projects for specific big problems. So we launch this integration collaboration. STS and Global Climate Hub will be the tool that gives the scientific background for UNFCCC Innovation Hub to support their deep dives. And at the moment, we have started with 2 case studies. Conrad and Lydia just came back from Korea. So one is in Wuhan in Korea, and the other case study is in Senegal. And we are also going to have on board a case study for India. These 3 Global South case studies to showcase how this partnership will be working. I will stop here. I know that I talk nonstop. I will not talk again today. Okay. So this is what we do. There is lots and lots of things in here. And I hope we can find something really interesting to work on.
Thank you, Phoebe. I think you gave us a lot of material to think about. If you could share the presentation that we can go through. I already know that the education skills fits very well with what I'm about to talk about, as well as the accelerator.
Okay, that's very good.
The other thing that I wanted to point out.
I don't have to re-announce you, right?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I'm assuming that. What I wanted to say also is that your maps look like you don't have any presence in the Middle East. So if you need to have connections in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, Jordan.
Yeah, I know. We work very closely with UAE, but here I am showing actual funded projects. So with UAE, we are working on a deep dive, but it's yet to be announced and yet to be contracted. Also with Qatar, but Jordan, we had a project in the past with the kingdom on water and water supply systems. But yeah, this
there is a global center in Jordan, so by the way,
okay, that's good.
If anything, they can help make the connection. Great.
That's very good.
Okay, so we're going to switch gears from all the amazing work that you're doing towards one of the projects that I'm leading, which I will tell you about in a second. But today's focus is trying to figure out in what I would call year 3 of the AI revolution, how to make sure that we are not going to allow a widening of the digital gap between, high-income countries and emerging and developing markets. So over the course of the presentation, which I hope is only going to be 40 minutes, I will provide the situational analysis of how bad it is now, and hopefully provide a little bit of ideas on how to prevent this digital gap. So the work that I'm presenting falls within the project that I have launched in 2024 that I called AI and the Future of Work. So when I was introduced to ChatGPT in November of 2022, I started to realize the transformational nature of artificial intelligence at that stage of its maturity and development, and how much it's going to affect all of our jobs, whether we want it or not. And I launched that initiative to try to basically give the university its primordial role to help shape the advances in artificial intelligence and make sure that we are moving towards a future where AI and human skills combine rather than AI replaces humans altogether. Number one. Number two, you remember from my earlier introduction, I am originally from Tunisia, where I was born and grew up. And so my concern was, great, in the US, in UK, in France, hopefully in Greece, you are doing everything that is needed in order to provide your students with the tools and the skills that they need in order to become marketable in the AI world. However, the question is, in a country like Tunisia or Jordan or Kenya, what is the prospect for the students in terms of having access to these resources? So I launched that project at Columbia also to make sure that we disseminate all of the things that we are finding. I will put this slide up in the very end, so you can scan in case you are interested, but a lot of this material comes from reports that we have published over the last year and a half. One of them about closing the AI gap, and then another one discussing the initiative and the goals. So in today's presentation, I will quickly set the stage in the background and then talk about some of the issues. So the issues with resources and infrastructure, describe a little bit about AI trainings and models, and then really we'll deep dive into the digital gap between high-income countries and low and middle-income countries. And finally, I will try to give you some of the opportunities. And I just finished some of the opportunities. Okay, so as I said, when ChatGPT was launched in November of 2022, I would mark 2023 as really year one of what I would call the Gen AI revolution. There is going to be a before and an after. And it, in my opinion, it kind of separated humanity into two groups, people like me who are very techno-optimist, and I believe that AI is going to help significantly in curing diseases like Alzheimer, Parkinson's, as long as Trump doesn't interfere. And then you have the techno-pessimists who believe that AI will come for all of our jobs and eventually kill us all. So somewhere we have to find like a happy middle. So we are the generation that will be remembered as having decided which direction we took. 100 years from now, they will look back and say, this is what they did. And because of that, we are now all dumb and we don't know anything in education, or they took these bad decisions and as a result, AI took over. So just remember that. We have the opportunity to have a major impact on where we are going. It's not too late. So we need to really involve universities and school to make sure that there is an integration of AI in all of the curricula. And I would say you should think about how much Greece is doing in that effort, across the board. And why now? Because AI, in my opinion, for those of you who understand a little bit of AI will never reach a final stage of development. One question that I was asked is, well, in 2023, when I was proposing this project to Columbia University, why don't you wait and see where it goes? No, because if you wait, you will be completely submerged by the technological advances and it will be too late. So it's important to act as soon as possible. So there are definitely, I want to put back the context of the speed of adoption so that you realize how fast things are moving these days. So it took 75 years for fixed telephones to reach 100 million users globally. But then mobile phones reached the same milestone in just 16 years. Internet took 7 years to connect 100 million users, but ChatGPT reached this number in just 2 months. So technological advances really are going faster and faster. But however, the speed is uneven worldwide. If you look at who is using ChatGPT amongst those 100 million users, you will see there is a disparity worldwide. So the question that Jeff Sachs back in 2005 with the Millennium Villages Project has asked, and something that we're asking now, is there a possibility of leapfrog? So can we actually help low and middle income countries to reach a point of evolution or revolution that is much faster? So there is a need for inclusive AI because we need to have a strong representation of emerging and developing market. Specific geographical, historical, economic, and cultural contexts need to be represented. And I will explain later why that is so important, because right now we are missing parts of the world fabric in the AI models that are being developed. It's not true as much today as it was a year ago, but it's still very much true. If you ask ChatGPT a question, even in Greek, the answer is the biased opinion of a white, heterosexual, Anglo-Saxon man. Okay, so just keep that in mind. And that is because the training material, as I will show you, comes from that point of view. So we need to have more. Huh? That is the information. And that is bad because that is not representative of the world fabric. So we have to ensure that AI tools are effective globally and not just in high-income countries. And there is a need to prevent this widening of the digital gap, because if they don't have the infrastructure, if we don't allow the talent to develop, then continuously it's going to be this white Anglo-Saxon perspective. And then the Greek voice is not going to be represented, the African voice is not going to be represented, etc. So I'm going to explain in multiple sections where we are and where are the problems. And let me start with resources and infrastructure. So it's all about money, right? And who has access to what? Within resources, let's talk about computational power. So I'm assuming we don't have a lot of AI engineers, like I'm not, but I want to put it back into the context so that you understand exactly every time that you're asking ChatGPT or DeepSeek a question, what goes into that and how much it costs. So for the computational power, ChatGPT is a technology that relies on thousands of specialized computer chips. It's impossible to accurately quantify AI's energy use. Do you know why? Because they will not tell us. If you actually ask OpenAI the question, they are keeping this very, very secretive. So it's impossible to accurately quantify. So these are estimates. So 500,000 kilowatt-hour of electricity for 200 million requests per day. By 2027, the AI servers could use between 85 and 134 terawatt per hour annually. This is the total consumption of Argentina, the Netherlands, and Sweden combined for the entire year, just for the AI requests, okay? So it's 0.5% of the world's current electricity use. So in that hungry system, how do you think low and middle income countries have any chance of being able to develop, let alone thrive? Huh? Yes. Well, so I don't know what happened with the presentation, but somehow this is not supposed to be like that. It's a good thing I know what I'm talking about. I can see what's behind the thing. So it's also computational power, and these are estimates. So the annual operating cost of ChatGPT in 2023 might have decreased a little bit. 474 million. So the daily cost is around 1.3 million. Each query is 1 cent. And I don't know whether you heard that CEO of OpenAI has put a statement, do not say thank you. Have you seen that? Yeah. Because, so you are trying to be nice, don't. It doesn't care. When it gives you an answer, don't say thank you, because every time you do that, you're actually killing forests, you're destroying water, and it costs 1 cent, which is a little bit unnecessary. So, John, it's the cost is so prohibitively high that some startups that were thinking about entering the generative AI market folded and declared bankruptcy. Even OpenAI had to partner with Microsoft in order to make sure that they have a strategic advantage. So even though most of the chips that they're using are still NVIDIA, we are told that Microsoft is actually developing their own chips so that they are not, unnecessarily, let's say, relying on that company. So for computational power, it is described as the predominant factor driving the industry today in the private sector. Companies have spent more than 80% of their total capital on computational power resources. So this is an idea of how this is going to evolve until 2032. So the market will grow at a rate of 6.8%, and it's projected that the market for global computing will reach 81 billion by 2032. And that is because of the impact of generative AI, large language models, and artificial intelligence. So International Data Corporation, they had a white paper in 2021, 2022, Global Computing Index Assessment. And they looked at the correlation between a country's gross GDP, the digital economy, and computing power. And they found that for every 1 point increase in the computing index, and they looked at 15 key countries, unfortunately not Greece, but the national digital economy and GDP increased by 3.5 per thousand and 1.8 per thousand, respectively. So when the computing index surpasses 40 points, the impact on GDP increases by 1.5 times. And that's 3 times when computing index exceeds 60. So They classified the countries into three groups. There were the two leaders, still US and China. Then they had a few chasers, Germany, UK, France, and then they had beginners, India, Italy, Brazil, Russia, Southern Africa, etc. So United States and China were the top two countries. Rising countries range between 40 and 55 points. And then you had scores lower than 40 in the startup countries. But the thing is, most of the low and middle income countries are not even on that scale. They are not even able to put their foot on the first point of the ladder. They are so far behind. So if you think now, what that means for universities in the context of computational power. So universities in high-income countries, they often possess powerful computing infrastructures and can afford high-performance hardware or cloud-based services for AI trainings. They allocate substantial funding in supercomputer clusters and high-performing computing facilities. They also have state-of-the-art centers equipped with powerful servers, graphic processing units, which are key to optimizing deep learning and specialized hardware for data analysis and machine learning. And they often collaborate with industry and government agencies, which facilitate access to shared resources and expertise. So you'll often see, for example, that Colombia just had a partnership with Microsoft, with Amazon, etc., where the engineering school or the business school will get some funding in order to develop AI tools. Because it's kind of like a virtuous circle. We have the resources, we're getting more resources to develop the tools, so it just helps us flourish.
But is the computing power issue at the university or at the company?
It is at the university. It is at the university. When you are large universities like Harvard, Columbia, MIT, you have the computing power. And it's actually happening that it makes sense for Amazon to give money because our workers work a lot less than at the private sector rate. And so in order for them to develop and have more IP, yes, yes, no, they work for less. It costs less. It costs less to pay Columbia than to pay Bain or Accenture or Okay, so now conversely, if you think about the situation in low and middle income countries, universities and EMDs generally have much less computational capacity, if at all. So hindering their capacity to train and deploy advanced AI models. They're forced to rely on models that were developed elsewhere in other countries. So they operate with tightly constrained budgets, making it very difficult to invest in high-end computing infrastructure. If you operate on it's evident, if you operate on a low budget, you have to think about where your money is going to go. It's going to go into salaries, it's going to go into some of the research that may have more direct impact on the needs of the country. Do you want to invest in high compute power? The case needs to be made. And it's not always easy to prioritize when you are working in the engineering department to say this is where the money should be going when you have other competing parts of the university. The other issue, of course, when you start traveling worldwide is the limited internet bandwidth. It can be a major barrier, and outdated servers and limited access to GPU. So even with access to funding for AI startups, if they don't have access to computing power, their capacity to innovate AI solutions become highly limited. You have super talented people in low and middle income countries, but if they don't have access to the resource for their ideas to come to fruition, what is going to happen? Number one, they're going to leave. And it creates this other cycle where the talent from low and middle income countries, instead of developing the infrastructure, is contributing to the development in high income countries. So access to these high powered computers allow innovators and researchers to study and model complex development and economic problems that would otherwise be challenging to solve. Okay, number one, resources. Number two, now availability of data. So some people have called data the new gold or the new oil, okay? Having access to the data is going to become very, very critical, and it's already been the case. So AI models like ChatGPT rely on large amounts of diverse, high-quality data for training, which have been fed into their algorithm. So, for example, to develop a large language model, simple large language model, developers need a few 100 million words of digitized text to produce sentences that make sense. So, have you heard about the Turing test? So the Turing test, basically, for those of you who don't know, was thought of by this genius from the UK in the 50s. He kind of helped end war and probably is credited with inventing the first computer, but he already imagined that there was a future with artificial intelligence, and he created a test, I don't know whether he named it after himself, where he said, when AI becomes so developed, if you have a conversation with it, if it's able to make you believe it's human, then it passes the Turing test, okay? So these simple large language model with just few 100 million words, they are able to make grammatically correct sentences, but they would still not fool you. You would still be able to see, okay, that doesn't sound very human-like. However, you can now create LLMs for fact-based outputs or complex analysis. Everything you're using with ChatGPT, it's amazing, but that's actually trained on billions or tens of billions of digitized text. So developed countries with their advanced technological infrastructure and access to abundant data sources are generally more likely to possess the necessary data in order to create these sophisticated models. Most developers and universities in EMDEs have limited access to comprehensive data sets, inhibiting their ability to train AI models effectively. Less volume and less accurate training data will generally lead to less accurate models. So I want to show you what that looks in reality. And I have asked Google, with a simple Google search, basically how many web pages there are if I asked the question about health in the US. There are 19 billion pages, not words, pages that talk about health in the US. Health in the UK, we descend to 8 billion. If we do health in Brazil, it's 1 billion. And where I come from, if you ask the question in English, health Tunisia, you have around 287 million pages. So I'm giving the example about education. If you compare the number of pages talking about education in the US, you are at 16 billion, you are at 202 million. So there are 80 times less material available for somebody who is trying to develop a model discussing education in Tunisia than in the United States. So, yes. Sorry? Yes, I will talk about that. Thank you for bringing that up. That's why I said, if you ask the question in English, do you think it's going to be better if we take into account the language? Because you know, English is not our national language in Tunisia. It is. Same? You say it's worse. Why?
Because we get much less data
Of course. So let's wait a few more slides and then we'll see.
The question was the results of this taking the keyword, you said the keyword 10 plus US,
Yes.
10 plus
Yes.
UK.
Yes. So basically, it then looked at web pages that discussed or had the keywords health and Tunisia, written in English.
Shouldn't you adjust for population, for a myriad of things that change the inverted commas importance or percentage impact of the country on?
Sure, but the issue here is actually the language. It's let's continue and you'll see when I compare.
But it's also one.
But does it matter that Tunisia has 12 million and the US has 350 million? Because in the end, if you're interested in
terms of their potential to produce output, it matters, yes. But in terms of their right to have access to cutting edge technology to support their welfare, no, if we had an equality.
well, I almost regret, I'm sorry that I didn't put Greece, because of course it would have made it super interesting, so you can compare. Because what do you think? Are you more on this side or more on that side? Yes. which is something we should talk about in the conclusion. So there is a problem of digitization in emerging and developing markets. Hundreds of languages in EMDEs are spoken, but not written. So they will not have representation, because the only way you develop an LLM is if you actually have a written page that it can absorb. So UN Technology and Innovation Report from 2023 shows that AI frontrunners such as China, United Kingdom, and the United States possess nearly half of all AI-related publications and patents. This dominance leaves many nations, particularly EMDE, lagging behind and often relegate to the role of mere data providers. So you can see that it's true, OpenAI will go to countries and basically do data harvesting. Or they will go and they will pay Kenyans in order to do data entry, and sometimes in conditions that are not acceptable. So because they don't necessarily find the workforce in the United States to feed the LLM, you will have data people who are doing data entry in Nairobi or in South Africa, etc. So a handful of global tech giants control most of the data flows and revenues from digital services, which further centralizes the direction and benefits of AI and aggravates existing technology divides based on geography, gender, income, and age. So that was the data. We'll come back to the language. Expertise and talent readiness. So developing and implementing AI systems require highly skilled professionals with expertise in areas such as machine learning, data science, and AI ethics. Though that part is sometimes not taken into account. Developed countries tend to have a more established ecosystem for AI research and a larger pool of skilled professionals. They often attract top talent, which they sometimes steal from middle-income countries. They have well-funded research programs, as we already talked about, and offer extensive opportunities for collaboration. Universities in developing countries may face challenges in attracting and training AI experts, limiting their ability to build and deploy sophisticated AI systems. Because it makes sense. How do you train AI engineers for complex, tasks for future jobs if then the resource is not available for them to continue their work? Eventually, they will be more useful elsewhere. So the Harvard Business Review report ranked 60 countries in 4 categories relative to tech skills: cutting edge, competitive, emerging, and lagging. This is a little old, already 2019. So Argentina, Czech Republic, Austria topped the list in terms of tech skills. Kenya, Pakistan, Nigeria placed in the bottom 3. So the report found really stark skill contrast between developed and developing markets, with North America and Europe ahead, as you would expect, and then Latin America, Asia, and Middle East being behind. Africa completely left behind. So the US actually at the time in 2019 failed to reach the top quartile of countries. 2019, most of the world lived in countries that were lagging in critical tech skills. Countries with developing economies and with less to invest in education saw the largest skill deficiencies, with 90% ranking in the lagging or emerging categories. So back in 2018, the World Economic Forum already predicted that by 2022, AI and machine learning skills would be among the world's top most in-demand skills. So this was before, ChatGPT and the evidence that this is the future that we're heading into. And actually, in January 2024, the IMF released another report, which was very worrisome for people from where I come from, which is that if you were born in low and middle income countries, 40% of our youth will have zero chance of ever finding a job in the new global AI market because of the things that I'm showing to you, okay? Access to universities that will not teach you the right skills, and even if they do, then the resources are not good enough. So another issue is the retention of talent trained in EMDEs. So I am a hypocrite because I was trained in a low and middle income countries, and I have left, and I am now teaching in a high income country. So I'm surely not going to criticize people who do that for personal reasons. However, Tunisia is now lacking one more brain because they trained me and then I left. So it is going to be.
Yeah, you don't have to be locally, physically
Yes. Yes,
You can't
yes.
be all the rest of them.
It's true, it's true. So I find ways now to connect with you, Tunisian University. It's true. But I mean, so professor, we are a little bit lucky, right? But in terms of like when you have AI engineers, etc., maybe they have more impact when they are still physically local than when they are decentralized. To be discussed. Financial resources. So yes. Sure.
I had a question on what you said from the UN Innovation Report, China data, part of the data right now. This is also a risk that Harari addresses a lot about the AI is hard to monopolize the data and with the civic dictators. So what's your thought on that? Your take how to address this?
I think that's totally possible. I have an entire section about language, and I want to make the point about how English has a predominance, which disproportionately gives an advantage to English speaker over any other language. Ask me the question again after that slide, but this is a great question. So financial constraints summarize the divide between high-income countries and low and middle-income countries. Isn't that always the case, right? So whatever you think about, access to good health, access to good education, and now being able to provide AI tools or AI resources to the local talent, financial resources. AI research and development requires significant investment in infrastructure, hardware, software, and ongoing maintenance. So developed countries with greater financial resources can allocate substantial funds. Obviously, this is intuitive. Universities in developing countries may struggle to secure sufficient funding for AI-related projects. We already talked about that. And this is basically just looking at key drivers that are innovation, capital, rules, and data. You can see, you could possibly see that US is leading in the top. And then you have countries in low and middle income countries that really struggle being able to assemble these four pillars in their country. Now we're going to move into the language. Okay, so the AI training models. The training of ChatGPT's algorithm uses mostly English language. I mean, yeah, makes sense. It's an American company, so why would they have started with anything else? But it poses significant challenges for speakers of other languages, including Chinese, Spanish, and Arabic. So I didn't put Greek. You'll see why. While ChatGPT's capabilities in generating human-like responses and providing information are impressive, its effectiveness and accuracy were shown to be more limited when interacting with non-English speakers. Because if you ask the question in English, then it spits words in English. By the way, you know how it works, right? Obviously, we are all, aware that it's actually not intelligence. So it is just statistical models, where a word is predicted to come after another word, and it's impressive what it's able to do, but it doesn't actually understand what it's saying to you. So the availability of relevant data for training ChatGPT in languages other than English may be limited. So AI models like ChatGPT require large volumes of high-quality data for the training. While there is a wealth of English language data available on the internet, the same cannot be said for all the other languages, including Chinese and Arabic, which are estimated to be spoken by 1.35 billion and 422 million people worldwide. So let's look at this. Top 10 languages. Sorry, you didn't make it. But I mean, I want to say good job, it's Italy, because less than 1% of the world
shows that we haven't been in the empire for the last centuries.
Or that you should work on the predominance of Greek publications in Greek in order to...
No, I'm not sure.
So, if you...
Yeah.
Sorry. This is the data that I found. So what it shows here is
It's a model of the latest empire.
the share of the people who speak it, and even though English is only spoken by 70% of the world population, half of the websites are in English. I mean, intuitively, it makes sense. We are forced to publish in English when we write anything scientific. Otherwise, the impact is going to be significantly decreased. So there is an immense bias towards English.
Okay, this is very interesting. So this is boys who speaks English
It's-
or who has the first language?
This is share of the population. 17% of the world population speak English.
In terms
however-
of-
As long
in
as the
terms
first
of
language.
innate or
As a-
second language?
No, are able to communicate in English.
Only 70% in English?
Okay, maybe not. Maybe it is as a native. Yeah. It makes
So
sense.
the second language is a
Yeah.
critical issue. The second one is Chinese.
So in terms of, the second one is Chinese.
No, I mean
13.8.
second language in terms after native, because it's 17 are native, but you have 60% speaking it in
Secondary.
secondary, possible to
You know, that's-
communicate fashion.
That's interesting. I will have to look into how much that changes the dynamic. But I think that's not even the reason. The reason is because we are forced to, like a lot of the publications are in English in order to, because it's the scientific language, right? So people will be.
It's not science.
No, but a lot of the things, and I will make the point in the next slide, a lot of the things are written in English, even about topics that have nothing to do about England or, in countries where English is not the primary language. Because in order to communicate the information, that is the language that is used.
You speak, not only, I mean, if you do research, you don't do research only on Greece. I wouldn't talk about anything in Greece.
In Greek.
You must find a reporter in Greece. Why? Because it cannot be understood.
So it contributes to that gap.
It's about the bias of English for global
Sorry?
impact.
It's science, it's the same. Science is the same,
Science
technology is the
is
same.
absolutely the same. You could never publish, even in French. Forget about Arabic. No one will read it. Or at least the impact will be much lower because only.
Is it wrong or right?
Philosophical question because, we are coming into a system that is not decades, it's almost centuries old in terms of publishing in English, right? And so you are now saying what? Maybe that we should try to figure out other ways to increase you don't think so?
I think up until now, it's been about the objective and the purpose. So if up until now, the objective has been about maximizing the
Yes.
reach and maximizing the impact,
Yes,
then fair enough English. But now we're talking about access. So then we have
or
to start
representation.
thinking about the framework, exactly, inclusion, access, representation. So the framework and the thinking around that also has to change, right? So the objective is slightly different.
So it will be interesting to find out ways where you can increase languages that are underrepresented so that they are still there without. Everywhere, like,
But AI,
LLMs don't just feed off of scientific content. And as you will see in a dramatic example coming out of Spain. All right,
But
let me.
it's the most robust content. Anyway, there is lots to be.
Great.
sorry, yeah, just one last point, but AI is like with its capacity to translate, like, I mean, there's like these things that like you're speaking in English and immediately, and okay, it's not good now, but like in 10 years and
I
5.
will give you an
It
example.
might be
I
phenomenal.
will give you an example coming out of Spain. Okay, so scarcity of, yes.
Reduce. So 17% is the percentage of population that speaks English as a second.
No. I think it's who consider.
5%.
Actually,
You did. Professor Kunduri.
It's 3 to 5%.
That is,
And this is the population that.
Thank you.
speaks English.
thank you.
Yes.
So Phoebe, this is everybody who speaks English, not just as a primary language. They just went to ask our friend ChatGPT, and this is what ChatGPT responded.
But it's biased.
Why does ChatGPT care?
It's biased.
It has listened to us.
It's a quite male Anglo-Saxon, then maybe this is bias up, not
Biased.
downwards.
Anyhow, do you have to go?
He has to go, so I have to do something. But
So,
we will keep on the, I don't have it with me, you know.
yes, sorry, we're a little over time.
No, it's really.
Okay. The scarcity of Arabic, Chinese, and then other languages. It hinders the model's ability to accurately understand and generate responses in these languages. So like I said, you might think, and it's too bad that he's leaving, he won't be in, Stefanos, you might think that the translation is working, but it isn't actually. When you ask the question in Greek, it has to go through a process, and then it decreases the validity of the answer. I will talk to you separately. I don't want to hold you back. Bye, Stefanos. So now this question about what if we ask the same question in the official language? So obviously English is not the official language of Tunisia. It's French and Arabic. And so I went back.
Έλα ρε Γιώργο, τι γίνεται? Στο Ροσκόφ. Ναι, ποιο είναι το?
Just give me a sec.
Is there a question?
Ναι. Δεν γίνεται και τόσο αντιπροσωπικό. Μόνο τοπογραφικά.
Πού είναι connected.
Ναι, καλά κάνεις, καλά κάνεις.
Familiarize yourself with this great table.
Α, αλήθεια. Α, χαιρετίσματα.
Παιδιά, ακούγεστε.
Χαιρετίσματα σε όλους. Και στη Μαρίνα και στον κύριο Νικολούδη και σε όλους.
Κάνε mute όλους.
Α, μάλιστα.
Να αφήσετε λίγο. Ο Αντώνης είναι που μιλάει. Is anybody else? Okay. Ωραία.
Όχι, βλέπεις τα μικρόφωνα, δεν χρειάζεται να πας από πάνω.
Maybe we just silenced an important voice. I don't know.
Well,
I don't speak Greek.
this is how we work here.
You think you have the monopoly of this? Like, are you kidding me?
Not many people are watching you from all over Greece. The guy who was speaking is from Crete.
Oh.
He's leading the HCMR. This is the Hellenic Institute of Marine Research. It's an important figure, but he was talking
To someone else, not to me. Okay. Well, I hope they are safe. I hear that they are fired.
Yeah, that's
So just to put it back into context, so you saw this part of the table. If I asked in English, health in Tunisia, you had that number. So I then went, and I speak the languages. So I went and I asked the question in Arabic. Saha fi Tunis. So that's 40 million. It's actually a lot less. And this is our national language. And then the colonizing language, which is French, has a little bit more, but still not. So that means that still, whether it is us, the Tunisian, writing about health in Tunisia, we will still write it in English rather than in Arabic or in French, for reasons that, we understand. Or if these pages are written, they are written by outsiders about us in English. So this has a direct impact on the quality of the training materials for the less represented languages, such as Arabic, or for specific contexts in low and middle income countries, such as Tunisia. The question is, what would happen to Greece? We'd have to look into this, or Greek. Lack of data from diversified language leads to issues in language understanding and context. So ChatGPT may struggle to comprehend nuances, idiomatic expressions, cultural references, and specific linguistic structures present in other languages, such as Arabic or Chinese, which is why, Stefanos, if you ask the question in Arabic and it translates it, it might not give you the same level of answer than if you had asked the question directly in English, okay? This limitation can lead to misinterpretation, incorrect responses, or a lack of understanding when ChatGPT interacts with Arabic or Chinese-speaking users or other non-English speakers. So I love that example because it really shows you how sometimes good initiatives can have completely unplanned consequences. Anybody speaks Catalan in the room? No? Okay. So I will translate what this cat is saying. But so if you use Google Translate with Catalan, because there is not enough training material, the local, native speakers will say to you, it's evidently machine-made. Like it's not natural and it's imperfect. So the government of Catalonia decided to launch websites with the extension .cat for Catalan. And the requirement was you had to write your webpage in Catalan. You can be based anywhere, but if you want to use .cat, you have to write, and it can be about anything, about your cooking recipes, about your trips, etc. But it has to be written in Catalan. Then the Americans found about it and decided that, oh, cute, .cat, I'm going to make a webpage for my animal. So this cat in Catalan is saying, what do you mean this is not for me? Because they realized that a lot of the Americans were creating web pages for their pets using the .cat extension, used Google Translate, which is imperfect, to create a text in Catalan from English, and then basically created a cycle of more garbage and more garbage, which some people are saying, they call that translationese. So it's a new language where you have the LLM or Google Translate that goes into these web pages and thinks that that is the language, but it's actually already translated poorly from its own system. You see what that means? So just showing you an example of how the way that you ask the question is actually important, the language, etc. So another challenge, potential bias in the training data. So AI models like ChatGPT learn from the data that they're trained on, and if those contain biases, the model will likely exhibit biases as well. So ChatGPT's training has primarily been focused on English. Biases present in English language data can carry over in its response. This bias can be particularly problematic when interacting with Arabic or Chinese-speaking users, as it may perpetuate cultural, social, linguistic biases that are specific to English-speaking contexts. Now, this is before ChatGPT. This was in 2016. So Microsoft had this idea of creating a chatbot for adolescents, where the chatbot, which was the early version of an AI, would basically go on social media and start reading tweets of adolescents and learn from them in order to answer questions. So it was a tool called Tai, where as an adolescent, you could talk freely about sexuality, about problems with your parents. The problem is because it was learning from social media of real humans who can be truly horrible, they had to discontinue the project, I think after 3 days, because Tai became Nazi, homophobic, completely against women, which is a reflection of what it saw online. So, problems with biases.
In adolescence,
What do you not understand? Are you shocked that humans are homophobic, against gender, and racist? Okay. The thing is, online they are even more than in real life because they always assume that they are hiding behind the screen. So you can look at this. You can look at this outcome. It was discontinued. I think it was after 3 days. Yes, yes, and I don't think that in 2025 it would be much different. So in other words, we are not less against gender. No, I think this was actually in the US.
That's right. I'm already sure.
Sorry. Yes. No, because I got distracted by the voice in the movie.
That's about the macro.
Of course.
But it's about the physical mass.
Yeah.
And so,
Correct. No, of course, it's not the majority, thank God, of the human race, but they are there.
Within 16 hours after it's released.
I love how you're fact checking me. This is incredible. I cannot say anything.
We are data people.
Listen, at least I didn't say 3 months, Like I did it 3 days, 16 hours, fine. I will remember that. Okay, I still have a few more slides. Sorry, way over time.
Take your time.
Yes,
Sorry, I know you're probably gonna talk about this later.
Yes.
but I just,
okay.
Given the talent with, the clustering of talent across, geographies like yourself, working in the US, there was a very interesting article waiting for, I read when I was a postgraduate, must be old, about how, like international football is a good example of, players from all over the world now move freely in a globalized economy, which touches upon sports as well, they perform really well. And this has also helped the national teams of Africa or, Europe to compete like they do. So this is a combination of both the environment that they can move over and enjoy the environment like researchers can do in the US, but it's obligatory by FIFA rules.
Yeah.
They only play for their
For the
national
national.
team. So do you envision something as rigid as that? So for example, researchers or for developers in these critical technology aspects, they have to contribute somehow. In this case, it could be, I don't know, coding or training, sorry, not an AI expert, sorry, in their native language as well.
I think it's a very interesting idea. Typically, everything that has to do with forcing is probably not the way to go. If you actually make a point of the win-win situation that, this is originally your country, you are now thriving in another context. Let's create an opportunity once a week where you go back. I already do that, for example, but it's.
In terms of language, because language is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so you mean in terms of like publishing in your own language or
contributing to, because this is what
But I think this is actually more complicated because, as Phoebe pointed out, I don't know how realistic it is. So let's say, for example, I have a very good study that I am going to be publishing about AI and education systems to reduce inequality in low-income countries. So evidently, I will be publishing this in English. So now I'm trying to make a point and say, I want to contribute to the pool of Arabic material. Great. I will make a point, but I will also probably jeopardize the impact that the study is going to have, and all the contributors, including Greeks. There's University of Thessaloniki that's part of this. I don't know how they will be happy about. So the idea of having it in multiple languages, which, for example, what the UN does, every report is written at least in 4 or 5 languages.
And European Commission, all.
How many languages do you then have?
European Commission about 20 something.
20 official. Everything is written in every national language.
Everything, all the legislation, everything.
Good.
Not science.
No, I understand. Yes.
It's a project that European Union, the Euro LLM is actually trained LLM models based on the European Union. And also, as part of this, there is the Institute of Language and Speech Processing under Athena Research Center, where they have already trained 2 LLM models. One, the previous one, was called Meltemi, and is based on Mistral.
Yes, of course, the French one, yes.
And now there is another one version, which also has been trained in ancient Greek, and it's called Greek, and it's based on Lama 3.1.
If you could send me this, I will add it. I have an entire slide about these initiatives. So next time I give the presentation, I can include that. Okay.
Great meeting you, so I have to go.
Of course, sorry. I mean, we are.
The person who is leading the development of the huge platform of SBS and Global Climate Hub, where tools like the ones that you are working on here can be also made available if you think.
Now that we met, we should have a Zoom call and decide of opportunities. Sorry that we are half an hour. I promised 10 minutes and then we're good. So I'm gonna go very quickly. This is just another proof about the digital gap where I'm showing percentage share of global AI market per area. So of course, North America, number one, Europe, number two, and within Europe, you'll see in the next slide, there is disparity, like it's not one monolithic block, and then way behind Latin America, Middle East, and Africa. So 2023 World Economic Forum released the AI Preparedness Index. It makes me very sad. As always, Africa is very behind. But look at this, even within Europe, you are on the lighter blue side, okay? So there is definitely some work to be done in Greece. I will leave this presentation, you can then look at it, but there is also a difference between the use case of what AI is helping in high-income countries versus low-income countries. And that is determining kind of like the incentives of certain companies to go into certain countries versus not. Okay, opportunities. So in AI infrastructure, the estimates show that AI revolution could increase Africa's economy by 1.5 trillion, 50% of the country's current GDP by 2030, if you make the right investments. So there's an urgent need to strengthen AI infrastructure, servers, data centers, cloud services, reliable internet access, all the things we talked about. NVIDIA announced a plan to build 200 million artificial intelligence centers in Indonesia with a local telecom company. And there was just an AI Africa summit in Rwanda in April. And South Africa announced that they have just purchased 3 billion worth of NVIDIA chips for AI compute. And they are making it freely. It's one company called Cassava Technology, who is making the compute available for free for any inventor, innovator, talent based in Africa. So EMDE's regions can create common pools of funding for open and accessible AI computing infrastructure. They should focus on making computing power accessible to researchers and innovators in the region, which is exactly what I just said. So at this AI summit, they also discussed a 30 billion fund over the next 10 years in order to train the talent, bring the resource, and create the servers. And incidentally, one of the things that was said at that meeting in Kigali is, hey, high-income countries, we are going to be your green energy of the future, we, the African continent. So it would make sense for you to invest now in creating green, renewable energy on the entire continent, because you are going to become so hungry with your data centers of electricity, which we can provide at much lower cost. So an interesting perspective there. So there was a talk about a global fund for AI. I don't think that it currently exists. You know, Jeffrey Sachs was the one who created the Global Fund for TB, AIDS, and Malaria back in 2000. It was hugely, hugely important in bringing change in those three diseases by providing access to medicine, vaccines, etc. Interestingly enough, he doesn't believe in the Global AI Fund. So, because he thinks that there are other things that are more important, like a global education fund. So, because the world cannot focus on more than one thing at a time, it seems. Thank you so much. We have now lost one fact checker, so I hope everybody else is.
I will check afterwards.
Thank you. So EMDE countries need to develop regional AI programs that support local researchers and innovators, subsidized or free computing resources. So I am actually working with the Public Investment Fund in Saudi Arabia, which is the sovereign Saudi fund. And as part of our partnership with Colombia and them, they're thinking about creating a regional hub based in Riyadh that would be for the entire Middle East, North Africa region. It would create a center of excellence. Colombia will participate. They will provide some of the funding. They want to attract other funding regionally.
Which country? Sorry.
Saudi Arabia. If you are young from any of the MENA region, so from Morocco all the way to Iraq, you can go for free to that center in Riyadh for 2 years, get training in AI, and one of two things can happen. Either the region is already developed enough and you can actually be useful, or you will be poached by high-income countries, but you still will be part of the network and the infrastructure.
Yanni, let me also, first of all, MENA includes Southeast Mediterranean as well.
Yes.
So people from this country can also.
No,
You shouldn't call it
No. Are you saying Greece? No. You're not Middle East, North Africa.
Cyprus. I mean,
No.
we run a MEN accelerator
I-
in Greece and Cyprus is part of
Okay,
that.
I'm not gonna debate with you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure being from Cyprus, you know that. We just looked at the 19 countries and I don't remember seeing Cyprus. And it literally is Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Egypt, all the way.
Anyway, okay, I will show you that. But let me tell you this, which you might not know, but it might be interesting and it could create a collaboration with what you have and what is already here. Yeah, 4 years ago, there was an investment, not a huge one, but a 20 million investment in Athens, in something called the Archimedes Center. Now, the Archimedes Center is at the Athena Research Center, which is one of the centers in Icoria Alliance. It is based, okay, Athena Research Center is the government research center for information technology, AI, and machine learning. The Sustainable Development Unit that I lead at that center is one of the units, okay? One of the other units, there are 7 units, one of the other units is something called Archimedes Research Center. And 4 years ago, the government has put in there 20 million. The center is led by Papadimitriou, who is at Columbia University, the professor at Columbia University, by Daskalakis, a professor at MIT, and somebody called and a local professor, who is not so local, Dimos Ellis, who used to work in Australia and so on. So the idea there is exactly similar to your MENA thing. So it's about educating Greeks on AI machine learning, either from abroad. So you might have spent 10 years in the US with a PhD, or India, in order to really respond to the need to have AI machine learning strong training center in the country. And it of course works with many different professors across the Greek academia and across the European and across the world working on AI. So there might be an interesting in there, especially telling me that you don't consider the Southeast Mediterranean as part of MENA region.
Our fact checker has left, so I would have asked her.
I will take her place.
It officially is not part of MENA, Greece and Cyprus, but it's considered Mediterranean and MENA. But if you're strictly speaking MENA, then Greece and Cyprus and the European.
Regardless, we can create the link because you are our next door cousin. And so the thing is, the Riyadh Center is not just machine learning and AI engineers. I think that is the point that's really important, because otherwise you're going to flood the market with too many engineers. I think it will be also important to look at 2 other sectors, like AI in healthcare or AI in education, and create expertise in those domains, which are going to be very, very critical. By the way, the same initiative that I'm leading in Colombia that has put me in touch with PIF, we're also thinking about one in Rio for LATAM.
So this is for AI, machine learning, computer, what else?
Healthcare, education, basically all of the skills where artificial intelligence is going to become critical.
Okay, that's good.
Because it's not just engineers.
So sustainability as well?
Yes, it could be, for example. And
So
we can define the curriculum.
About MOUs that could bring what we have in terms of skills and AI and health and all that, in order to extend that coverage.
Absolutely.
that geographical.
And that's the point I wanted to make here. So when our amazing leader went to the Middle East, I don't know whether you followed that, a month ago, he had a little tour of the Arab countries. When he stopped in Saudi Arabia, my colleagues at the Sovereign Fund called me and they said, so to celebrate Trump's visit, we just launched a new fund called Humane. So HUMAINE, and it's $10 billion to attract ideas, innovators from other countries to basically develop either infrastructure or programs in the kingdom. So if you are sitting on ideas that you need funding for and that you are okay also sharing with Saudi Arabia, there's $10 billion. So what I will do actually in the second part of 2025, through the project that I have, because we are represented in most of the regions, is to create these hubs where we will talk locally with universities to try to identify the innovators and then put them in touch with the funding and with the government. Yeah.
There is already a I mean, I can talk about Greece, but also Southern Europe, but also the whole of Europe. There is a very well identified ecosystems of startups and spin-offs in terms of innovators. And we can, what I'm trying to say is that you don't need to look hard.
No,
because these ecosystems are already
existing.
Very well structured and existing. Some are more developed than the other, but this was the work of EIT, at least in Europe, for the last 15 years.
It's evident that there are systems that are working in parallel. And I think these types of conversations allow you to realize there's no need to invent twice the wheel, that let's actually work together because it's to the benefit of everyone. Okay, I can see people are hungry and tired and they don't want to see me anymore. So I have jumped a few slides directly to the conclusion. You will have access to the presentation so you can read the missing 3 slides about other examples of what's happening in sub-Saharan Africa and in the Middle East. Okay, so just a few points of conclusion. So investment in local capacity building, need for funding education, research, and infrastructure in AI within low and middle income countries. Local talent development through universities, specialized training programs, and partnerships with international organizations. What we're talking about here can empower these countries to create homegrown AI solutions. Open access to data and AI tools. There's a need to advocate for global initiatives that promote open data sets, AI tools, and open source softwares. Because of course, when they develop these LLMs, they don't necessarily share them. And I think DeepSeek was a different example because they made everything available to everyone. Making AI resources available for free at a reduced cost can level the playing field for innovators and researchers in ENDEs, fostering more inclusive AI ecosystems. Collaboration and knowledge sharing. Need for international collaboration between high-income and low-income countries. Cross-border partnerships in AI research, development, and implementation can ensure knowledge transfer and help bridge the gap in AI skills and innovation. And ethical and inclusive AI policies, a part that is too often missed. Importance of developing AI frameworks and policies that account for the unique challenges of ENDEs. Global policymakers need to prioritize inclusivity and ensure that AI solutions address the specific socioeconomic needs of these regions without exacerbating existing inequalities. And on this note, thank you for coming, thank you for listening, and for staying longer than expected. So I don't know if we have time for a few questions or everybody running to lunch.
More questions. We are not that hungry.
We eat late in Greece, no?
We eat very late in Greece, late by my standards, definitely. Are there any questions, or maybe Epun and Kona can quickly also say how their work connects with the bigger picture that we are trying to co-design here?
Sure. So first of all, thank you for that very, very interesting presentation. I mean, lots of food for thought and several questions. I'm sure there'll be more to come as I think about it and digest it. My name is Ebon Akincheta. I'm an architect urban planner by training, but specializing in sustainable community development. And over the years, my research has focused a little bit more on the transdisciplinary aspects. So when Phoebe was talking about earlier, how we then engage the stakeholders, etc. So my background is actually a lot in practice, and I've worked in development for several years before then coming into academia, and even then working with municipalities and urban regeneration, etc. So the thing for me has always been, how do we make this practical? How do we make this accessible? How do we get people involved? How do we make them care? Because a lot of what we talk about in the academic side is interesting, but people can't really connect with it because they don't see their place in the whole context. So when you're talking about access, inclusivity, these are things that really resonate. And especially in the context of the work that we're trying to do with the Global Climate Hub, language is a huge aspect there. And then I'm sure Yota will also tell you, because we're developing digital tools as well to support these living labs, we call them. So essentially, they're cohorts of key stakeholders in all of the different areas that we're active. And we want to engage them not just in the context of the analysis and the modeling and co-creating the solutions, but even beyond that. So there are digital tools to support that. And of course, AI is becoming a very, very big part of that. But being able to make representative AI and stuff that makes sense for the local context and that people can actually engage with is a huge thing for us.
So how are you using AI in your particular, let's say, digital tools?
So right now, a lot of it has to connect with the policy. So where's George? I think George just stepped out. Where he moved? There he is. They're trying to throw me off.
Basically, these are large language models, and what you try to do is to the idea is to engage these things. Engaging any transition in that you are interested. And this transition is usually mobilized with some top-down regulation. I mean, this is the first step of a really happening transition, unless it comes from the roots, but this is not how it goes, at least in Europe. And then we get this regulation and legislation into these large language models that we try to identify what kind of skills and knowledge are needed for the stakeholder to really engage in the transition pathways design. So this is a very first basic information that they acquire in order to really understand why they cannot engage at first. So when you have them around the same table and you're talking to them about the green transition or decarbonization or climate resilience or any other issue, biodiversity resilience or fiscal spaces and stuff like that, sometimes it is impossible to get them engaged just because they don't see themselves in that transition. I'm an engineer, 60-year-old, trained in fossil fuels, having my job at the fossil fuel plant in my region. I don't see anywhere a green, renewable infrastructure that will employ me if that goes down. Plus, even if it goes there, I don't have the skills. So that is the first step of recognizing why it is important to make available the education program for this particular engineer, to see himself in the transition and maybe see his children in the transition.
So he would have to actively engage with the tool in order to get the benefit of understanding what. You think that would be the optimal? I think it's actually better to try to develop an AI tool that actively engage. Because right now, what you're describing, the AI tool is passive. The AI tool is passive because it doesn't initiate. It waits for the engineer to ask a question.
It depends. If you are part of the platform that we are building for the climate transition, that is the climate neutrality and climate resilience pathway, this tool is there. So if you are working at a plant and you are interested to see the recommendations of the transition, this tool is there for you.
I am not
Yeah.
reducing it. I'm saying this is fantastic because, of course, it simplifies all of the legislation in a way that instead of having to read what I understand, instead of having to read everything, you can ask
Yeah,
you
but-
have to ask a question and then
He's part of a living lab, remember?
yes.
So a living lab is like a meeting like this. And he's the representative of the fossil fuel engineers in the country or in the region.
Because you have different
So
stakeholders.
let me give you a thought about the Horizon grant. So remember we repurposed a digital tool that was for Syrian displaced population. We're now doing this for HIV positives, mental health. So the way that we are going to develop the AI tool is not passive, meaning, yes, you can open the application and ask questions, but we want at some point the AI to engage with you, even when you are not asking for it. How many of you have used Duolingo?
Yeah,
Okay.
only in China.
You do know how annoying that app is, right? Because it's like 5 minutes before midnight and it like tells you, oh my God, you're gonna lose your score and you feel so bad. So that's an active AI engagement because it reaches out to you. You would have to tailor it in a way. So for example, because we're dealing with mental health, we are going to actively make sure that it reaches out to the person to check and make sure that they are okay. Or another thing that we're doing, so we have, let's say, someone who is HIV positive, female, 35 years old. Sorry, do we have to leave?
I have to have minutes, not leave, have a meeting with Senegal.
No.
With his, you know, it has all the high commissioners and
Course,
stuff
of course.
like that, so. But you're not gonna go away.
Yes, I am.
Well,
Well, the thing is, I have a day worth of work with my students back at the hotel, but at 3, so I have another hour. But what I wanted to say is
are
that
you flying now?
no. But you know, 3 is going to be 9 a.m. I think, New York. So I'm starting my New York day.
Tomorrow, are you flying out?
Tomorrow I am leaving. Yes.
Okay, yes. Go on.
But just an idea. So for example, we're also doing demographic comparisons. So you are using your app and you're asking certain questions because you are a 35-year-old female with this condition.
I like the 35.
The app then pools that demographic and makes suggestions. So when you are a 35 female with similar condition, when you open the app, it will say, hey, have you thought about this? Are you interested in that? So it has nothing to do with your own searches, but it basically puts you into a
Incentivizes you to new.
based on your demographic. So if you have engineers in other parts of Greece that have asked questions or are interested in certain things, it should inform the entire community.
But
That's active.
This is a standard recommendation system. It's not
Yeah.
an AI
I mean,
thing, right? I mean, always the recommendation systems taking into account.
That actually combines demographic users and actively makes recommendations to you.
No, I mean that.
I don't know. Horizon felt it was innovative and
No, I mean it is, but it's not an AI.
It can be added.
Yes.
to what we are doing. It's very interesting. It can be added. Do you want to say something?
no, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. He's really leaving.
Are you joining? You're not joining the.
How many minutes? 2:30. Okay, say in 3 words, how many minutes was your meeting?
Okay, so really interesting.
So
The
basically,
water-
Epun and Connor, they've been working with me for many years. They are the leading researchers among the group. And I just wanted to give them 3 minutes to say, you know, a very small description, a short description of what. Yeah, Con?
The presentation was really relevant to some of our work with AI, specifically in ESGs, So we use their AI in order to, let's say, calculate some alternative metrics or key performance indicators under environment, social and governance aspect in companies. So the idea is that companies, most of the companies have voluntarily report on their ESGs.
Yeah.
So we are using AI in order to calculate some alternative metrics that try to find in news, in global net, negative evidence against the data declared by the company. But what you underlined, it's really interesting because if there is a lot of bias in, in the language of the reported news, then for example, for these metrics we are calculating, because later are used in models also and in asset pricing. So it might be very, very, interesting to explore what the bias in identifying controversies, the ESGs, maybe due to language in some countries which are for greenwashing, which are underrepresented. Maybe it's harder, or I don't know.
Or reported
What the
in
bias
local
would be.
language.
Do you have your own AI engineers? Because I'm about to make an offer, but do you have your own AI engineers as the
AI engineers.
at this? Okay, so the two of you take care of all of their demands.
No, there are George, Vivos is also doing.
Okay, great. Then I'm not going to make the offer.
There's quite a few. There is a big team. I mean, if you stay here, you will come tomorrow at Athena Research Center. There is a big team, team on there. But basically, what I want you to do now that I will be outside is to sit with. Okay, Connor has to go to one of the companies that we are working, but maybe sit with Boone.
But you don't need me in this, Anigo.
Sorry?
You don't need me in this meeting.
No, Phoebe, I think.
No, it's important to see.
Listen, I think
Yeah.
at this point, after 3 hours, maybe it makes more sense since you're also leaving and I want your ears to be present to postpone by a week on a Zoom when everybody comes in fresh. And they want to see me again. Now they don't. And then we have an hour with you where we can just focus on that. Maybe we'll invite.
Let me propose the following thing. During that meeting, now that you've seen our different initiatives and how they create groups of projects, it would be interesting to also see a list of proposals that we are working on now. There are about 30 proposals, big horizon projects, and look into the possibility of connecting. And then also, because we are very interested in expanding the work of the Global Climate Hub in articulating transition pathways, it might be interesting to create a MOUs with the Columbia Global Centers, because there what we need is not just access to the hubs for the living labs, but also capacity with regards to data. So
that's why I think I'll invite. I mean, for sure,
Yeah.
I'll invite Stefanos and Marili.
Yeah.
I don't represent global centers, but they do.
Yeah.
So they'll be able to talk about that.
Yeah, sure.
That plan.
Yeah. So what we are interested in is exactly that, to be able to share our capacity and our technology and our scientific modeling to others in order to use.
I mean, we're already fine. You're working.
I
You're
know.
working with our cousins at
Yes.
SDSN. Now
I want
you're
to
going
make
to
it more
upgrade. Don't say that to Jeff. You're going to upgrade to CSD. Okay. But anyways, so let's. I guess I'll talk to Mary about scheduling the call.
Marian and Angelica.
Okay.
Yeah. But are you sure that you can get finance from Horizon nowadays? It's over and done with?
If not, I'm in trouble because I just created an entire team.
That's amazing. Because most of our projects, when we want to bring SDSN in, I bring the office in Paris, which is, European Hub, which I chair.
Now you can bring us.
Yeah,
because
Check with
there
you.
are some things that are more.
Just to add on this, thank you very much for your proposal as well. I'm a member of the proposal coordination team under Professor Guidance. So just to add in this, that the good news, as you already said, is that US entities can be funded. However, from what we have seen, needs to be specifically mentioned in the call. So you are not in trouble. There are several calls that specifically mention that under this call, US institute, US universities can have the funding. Or if not, we should in every proposal mention specifically why we need a specific US partner. So for sure you are not in trouble, but it needs some attention. It's something that we were discussing this some months ago.
So to summarize, when I was talking to Nicosia, I said, okay, great, but we are not eligible. And then she went into the details and it actually,
Yeah,
said
it's all
typically
that,
the US are able to, they cannot be prime, but they are able to
That's
receive.
very good. And there are also calls that, you can include China, India, stuff like that. So we can really bring in the global south, global
Correct.
north thing. Because all you say is about the equality
Exactly.
between the global and
involvement
and involvement and
inclusion.
inclusion and also financing, restructuring
Yes.
the financial architecture that can support all of
We
this.
want to give them a
inclusion.
chance to put their
Yes.
first leg on the ladder. Then, the talent is there and
Yes.
they'll be able, of course.
And
will be
I
able
was
to-
expecting low ranking of India because talent there in terms of tech and AI and mathematics is.
They are not China. So I think that they will, also it is possible that a lot of the engineers are no longer there. And a lot of the engineers we stole, which.
See that, you don't steal, you give opportunities. I
Yes,
was
yes,
18
yes.
years in the UK.
Yes,
I couldn't do what I'm doing now if I was not there for 18 years. And you're not stolen from Tunisia. You're gonna help Tunisia more than you.
let's have a drink and debate that.
Yeah.
Anyways, thank you again. You can go back to your lives. Really, thank you for saying. Where are you headed? Back to the center?
Because I don't have my keys for the center.
Am I on your way?